Hello. Welcome to a new kind of show. I don't know if it's going to be continuous, but it's going to be a little bit one-off from the other podcast you may have seen on my channel. I'm Spencer Crost. I'll be your host. I have three guests with me today, two of which were guests on my Time with Lynn podcast. So first, I'll introduce George Rogers. Hi, George.
Hello.
Uh, Richard Bukowski. Welcome, Richard. You might
Thank
remember.
you.
All right. And Mike, old friend Mike.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Okay. So we have a diverse set of views. The topic is Democratic Party autopsy. The impetus for this was that a few weeks ago, I can't remember when, the Democratic Party released a report, or they didn't release a report, they created a report on their failures that led to the 2024 election. This is coming off of two defeats in the last, 12 years. So 2016, Trump wins, 2020 Biden wins, 2024 Trump wins again. So they're trying to be reflective and introspective and say, where do we go wrong, right? Uh, they chose to not release that report, which I think was a big mistake. I think it's not too late to release it, to say, hey, we made an additional mistake with not releasing this, because I think there's a lack of trust. Um, you may have seen on the My Time with Lynn podcast, even the most recent episode is me talking about sort of my history, where I came from, what I was fighting for, things I believed in since about 2003 when I did work in politics full time. That's 2003 until 2016. And really, the thrust of it is that you could say, I'm mostly a Democrat. My friends can chime in whenever they want, but we were independent in a lot of ways, and we had some conservative views, but overall, I think, consider ourselves Franklin Roosevelt Democrats. We were kind of old school Democrats. We were into like New Deal style policies, large infrastructure programs. We disagreed with the left on some things, like we were for nuclear power because that just made more sense. We weren't for a lot of the environmental stuff, especially with like carbon credits and solar panels and that stuff. We were not in that part of it, and we weren't on the same side with a lot of the culture stuff so much. We thought, oh yeah, and Richard said he's a traditional Democrat. Yeah, so a lot of us, I think, were much more on the Democratic side as a whole. We said Franklin Roosevelt Democrats. Sometimes we say Lincoln Republicans later. We were trying to sort of bridge both sides, find the best of both parties.
I think if
Um,
you said like an Eisenhower Republican would kind of
there we go. There we go.
mesh nicer with the FDR. They're,
Sure.
they're kind of like,
They're pretty close. Yeah, way closer than I think they might be now. Yeah, critical of the military industrial complex, and Eisenhower building infrastructure projects as well, and being just a little bit more tame foreign policy, right? A little bit more restrained overall. So I think that's pretty fair. So we're going to look at a couple things, and again, anyone can chime in whenever they want, but look at really from the early 2000s, sort of broad scope, major changes in the Democratic Party, uh, what led to where they are now. I think a lot of it is they've self-inflicted errors, like unforced errors, and their change of policy that they just made certain mistakes. And I think if they want to be relevant again, I think without saying too much about the current parties or who we support or anything, my view is that I think the country benefits when we have two strong parties. And I think the Democrats have just made a lot of errors to weaken themselves. And even from, think about from their perspective, how like put yourself in a traditional Democrat's mind right now, like how did you lose twice to Donald Trump, right? And that's not me saying anything about him, Mr. President Trump or anything. That's just from their perspective, how did you lose, right? Like uh, you know, the perspective there is that the country had 4 years to see what Trump did, and then Biden came in for 4 years, and then they chose Trump again, right? So that's just from the Democratic perspective. So, and I think Mike and George were in the political full time around the same time I was, 2005, I think, with George, and then Mike maybe 2003. But I remember one of the big reasons I got politically involved was opposition to neoconservatism. Right? I didn't think that these foreign wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, were good ideas. I've brought this up on previous shows, but in the last 25 years, you look at how much the U.S. spent on foreign adventures and how much China has spent on foreign adventures, right? They're about the same. I forget the numbers.
10 trillion. Is that what it's at?
Sounds about right. Sounds about right. Yeah, someone can fact check us. But the same amount we've spent on Iraq, Afghanistan, and foreign military expenditures, China has spent on building infrastructure projects around the world, including Africa, which is going to be the continent of the next 50 years, South America, all over Asia, right? I would say, and they sort of did what we had done after World War II, where Franklin Roosevelt, we sent the TVA engineers to build the Three Gorges Dam and to be consultants on all these large infrastructure projects around the globe, right? That was what we used to do. We went away from that. We went into more foreign conflicts. I think it was a mistake. Obviously, that's hindsight, right? It's easy to critique something 60 years ago or 80 years ago from our standards, but at least the last 25 years, I think it's also the case. And some of us in 2003, 2004, 5, et cetera, had that view like, hey, this doesn't make any sense, right? Why are we doing this? What are we going to have to show for it? Will it just more likely cause more conflict and discord around the planet, create deeper divisions in terrorist groups, right? I remember it was so weird. I forget when it was. I think it was when ISIS emerged, and I don't even remember what year that was. When ISIS emerged, and then all of a sudden, the U.S. There's all these reports that the U.S. is collaborating with Al Qaeda. And I remember like my 2003 me was like, what? Wait, what are we doing? Like that's the relative best group to work with, right? Um, and again, easy with hindsight to say, would it have happened differently? I think, I don't know. I like to think it wouldn't have. Anyway, and again, feel free to chime in, but that was my perspective. The Democratic Party was like the anti-war party, and it's also useful for people to remember like how intense of like a right-wing vibe it was in the country. I remember some buddies and I were at a lake just swimming, and this was like 2000, must have been 2002, 2003. So Afghanistan had started, but not yet Iraq, I think. And these young dudes had a little boat, and they made the side of it to look like a destroyer, and they just kept um, not sailing, but moving around the lake, playing "Brought to You Courtesy" by the Red, White, and Blue. And it's like that was, but that's like the image of like how patriotic and like you couldn't critique the war, you couldn't critique, you could. There was free speech, but it was just the environment was very, I would say, hostile and very much more conservative, much more right wing in a sense. So the left was the opposition. We weren't for those foreign conflicts. Um, Go ahead.
And because the Democrats as a party pretty much supported every step of going into a war with Afghanistan and Iraq.
They did.
They voted all for the Patriot Act. They're all, uh, I think that some of the media and like the younger, like magazines and music we're listening to was against the war, but Democrats weren't for a while.
That's true.
Not until maybe
That's it.
around Bush's second election, they were kind of, but they also ran a guy that was like, I could do the war better.
Yeah, John Kerry. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
probably true, though. It's probably true.
I don't maybe. I don't know if he would have. Well, I brought this up in a previous episode, but Kerry's comments from about a year ago when he said the Constitution is a problem, like forgetting our goals, and they're like, geez, this guy was almost
Oh,
our president, and he was our Secretary of State for a long time. So yeah, George is a very good point. And I think that not to it speaks to my point about the overall vibe was very like very pro-war, and it was yeah the media as a whole was very like you can't criticize our troops, etc. Um,
The media, big time TV shows. I remember
sure,
TV shows were like Bush be speaking, and they'd be like, someone would say something, be like, quiet, the president's speaking.
yeah,
well, it was kind of like after the during the pandemic, if you didn't wear a mask,
sure, yeah. There's
you
that
know,
social
you were you
pressure,
were you were the enemy.
right? Yeah, yeah. Freedom,
So I don't
free.
know if you remember. God, this is bringing up so many memories, Spencer. And I'll try to find this video. Robert Byrd gave a floor speech right before I think they attacked Iraq. I think there was a resolution they were passing,
Mhm.
and it was such a historic thing because he was sort of in kind of in shock about how little debate there was um, on the floor of Congress before they launched this huge war. And it might have been you remember, well, really worldwide, there was a worldwide sort of street protest
Hmm.
before the war, and that was kind of like that didn't work either.
It was the single largest day of protest, and like Michael Moore made a big promo video about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think System of a Down did the song for it or something. I
Oh,
think.
really?
Yeah, I remember the video. Michael Moore was a big impetus for me at the time, being a pretty hardcore Democrat. He was one of the people that inspired me to get into politics fully.
Oh, wow.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's likely Michael Moore.
Yeah. No, and and I say that because if you were to meet 2003 me, you would think this guy's like a left-wing Democrat. At the time anyway. That's I think most people, and I think a lot of people in our movement were like that too. As a whole, right? There was exceptions.
I think Michael Moore categorically is a left-wing Democrat because he's a socialist, right?
I don't know. I didn't know that part, but I haven't
Okay.
followed him in a long time. We had our movement had our run-ins with him, but anyway, and actually jumping forward a little bit because we were uh, critical of Obama. Like we weren't like well, in this part of getting into like what our movement represented, but also what we all worked for. We weren't beholden to one side or another. We were just had a certain commitment to a policy or a principle, right? And so we were in the Obama years, we were critical of any time Obama was doing things that we thought were pro-war. And one of our members confronted Michael Moore at some political event, and he said, "Oh, you're." He responded. I forget what we said, but he responded with, "Oh, you guys are probably for war, huh?" And we're like, "No, but Obama is." Like, and what? Like, are you gonna deny? Like, I think we must have been critiquing Obama, right? Um, so just to show a little bit of the divide, because I think, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, but when Obama came in, I mean, some of us had met him and we thought, okay, maybe he's going to be good. It seems like he's like a good speaker. He's a good like orator, and he's obviously young and good looking and charming. But like, what's the policy going to be? That was always like our concern, my concern at least. And I think when he came in, it was just it was like a slow disappointment for me at least. We're like, all right, this guy is just doing the same stuff, and even like exacerbating some of it more. Because the bailouts were like tail end of Bush's second term, and then into first Obama, and then the second bailouts were in 2012. And we're like, you guys are bailing out Wall Street? Like I thought, Franklin Roosevelt was at least putting some guardrails on it, or at least we would hope that the Democrats wouldn't be the pro Wall Street party, right? So that's just one example.
Yeah.
Um,
2008 was understandable. Bush had to do it. They did it again. It started by 2012, like the recession, we're coming out of the recession. There really wasn't a need to uh, do it again.
yeah, yeah, and then I don't know if you guys have more to say about that, but that was yeah, we covered the auto bailouts earlier. That kind of led into it a little bit with the finance stuff. Just to say that we were in 2005, and I covered this in previous shows, but we were arguing when the auto crisis was going on in 2005. We were saying, hey, let's take a Franklin Roosevelt approach. Let's retool this industry. The machine tools, the machines that build the machines. We probably don't need as many cars. We could be building light rail or high-speed rail or nuclear components, and let's use this as an opportunity to reconfigure these factories to build things that could be much more useful to us. That wasn't done. I think that was under Bush's second term. But I just remember that was the first time I was doing lobbying in the the Capitol, mostly in the Senate side, and talking to these Democratic senators who just they would like privately admit, like, yeah, we know what you're saying is right, but we can't do it and we're not going to stand up for it. Which, maybe you
Imagine
could
the str
good.
imagine the strategy of selling past the Republicans an idea like that, because that's just going to be communism and complete state control, government control. They're going to destroy the auto industry, you know, and there's
Yeah,
going to be lobbyists to support them. And could Trump do it? Hell yeah, Trump could do it, and they would go with it and be like brilliant move. But as a political strategy, and we are kind of talking about the failures of Democrats as strategy,
sure.
they're always afraid. I think one of the reasons they lost against Trump this last time was they're so afraid. If you watch any Democrat from like a high level to like a mid tier AOC level to like lower kind of local levels, state levels, they all at least I see it. They seem like they're afraid to say things. They
Hmm.
seem nervous. They look like they're walking around issues and they want to address things in certain ways. Seems robotic, seems disingenuous. Um, and with Trump, Republicans were able to kind of break free from those restraints. You know, you have
Sure.
these like carefully crafted messages coming from like even someone like AC that's supposed to be more passionate, right?
Right.
But I don't know. It's not landing, particularly with the young crowds, right? This last between the midterms, the 2022 midterms, and the 2024 general election, the increase that Trump had, that the MAGA movement had, and Republicans had, they increased every state,
Sure.
every single state. Democrats, none. They shrunk in every single state. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that like to be general, like literally.
Yeah.
Um, the messaging that Republicans have is so much funner, it's so much livelier, it's off the cuff. Like literally, it's Trump rallies, and it's like, who wants to own the land?
Sure. It's part of it.
We're gonna make this fucking country great again.
Sure.
And people are like, there's fucking fireworks, and it's like, you know,
Well,
like,
I think
wow, I want
in
to
that in that 2 year time period, the Trump saying fake news and fake media, he kept saying that as a mantra, which is one of his strengths. When he has a message, he keeps on it over and over. And
Sure.
I think during that
be. Yeah,
2 year time period, I think real people really, with the decline of Biden being so obvious to everybody,
Hmm.
the media couldn't hide the fact that they were fake, that they were hiding so much from the American people. And I think even the most
mhm.
liberal supporters of Biden couldn't deny that. They may not want to talk about it, but pretty much the whole country knew that all the corporate media was putting on a fake show, and Trump was proven right about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
I would,
I think that continues today with the media. It's still, although last night I watched or maybe it was the night before, the segment on the stuff down in Venezuela.
yeah.
Yeah.
CNN had some pretty great coverage,
Okay.
really balanced, not too political, and then very informative. They had some great national security advisors on and stuff, and I was pretty impressed.
Nice. I haven't seen it yet. That's to me, that's one of the promises to come out of this whole last decade or so is the death of old media and like just all the problems it had, which is being like obviously biased, playing to the lowest common denominator of someone's intelligence, not showing nuance, showing just like clips that they want to show. And you see it on the left and right, I think. Um, Obviously, the rise of new media, podcasts, long form discussions. I'm hoping that it ends
Message
either
boards.
sure, yeah, you're more experienced than I am on that. But hopefully, either traditional media can reform and upgrade their software and, become something more useful, or they can just die off and be replaced. I mean, even like look at viewership numbers, how many people are listening to like news podcasts versus traditional shows, right? And now like anyway, so I'm sure you guys have thoughts on that, but I'm hoping that's a positive to come out of this last decade-ish of time.
Oh,
I
I'll just can I pose a
go ahead.
question?
Yeah,
The splicing of the Trump speech on January 6th by the
yeah,
BBC.
sure.
So, what's your opinion on what should happen to the BBC?
Good question. Trump sued him
I think
I'm
he's
not
suing them right now.
he
Yeah,
sued
Yeah,
yeah,
for like billions,
billions
33
like
of
$10
billion.
billion dollars.
yeah, that's I don't know if you guys have an opinion. I don't have an opinion on it. I'm actually thinking about this recently, even with some of like the Minnesota stuff last few weeks. Um, I almost thought there should be like more slander or libel suits with some of these just like really false claims coming out, like if there's no punishment for these for traditional media, if traditional media are like telling falsehoods, then there should be repercussions, right? You can't, right? That's like fundamental to how our press is supposed to work. So
Well,
I'm
I think there was a lawsuit. I think it was with the Fox affiliate down in Florida many years ago, pretty much about that. And they basically said that the media is they can lie and that's okay. Like it's not a crime for them to do that.
That's
If
crazy.
it's not
You know what I mean?
news though, if it's not like Fox News had the issue and they had to like slap on like 6 hours a day of actual news, but someone like Tucker Carlson when he was on there, like you can say anything and you're not a news segment.
If it's just an
But BBC
opinion or something.
is a news organization, and I don't even know why they had to edit it that way. Like in the context, he's basically saying the same thing, but for their segment to like really scare people, like he's just straight out like go down there and be wild.
Right.
Um, what are they even doing? Like
Sure.
they need to sensationalize the most sensational president of all time. Like an idiot. Like it was
Sure.
his rally. They brought buses. He told people to go to the Capitol. He didn't say go in there and beat them up. Uh, he said
But
fight, but
but
you don't have to
but the
take
thing is,
fight as actually fight.
well, no, everyone uses the word fight. But
Yeah,
the
it's
thing that was
politics. Yeah,
different, there's lying to people is one thing, but
Selective editing.
taking a speech and basically creating a new speech, that's a whole different level of treachery. You're essentially constructing your own speech,
Sure.
and you're just using words, from it's kind of like an AI speech, really.
yeah.
I
Sure.
just I just thought that was so egregious. It was just a new level of deceit. It's one thing to say not to like cut short a clip or selectively edit things out of context, stuff like that.
Hmm.
But splicing together pieces of a speech to create your own new speech, that's a whole different level of
I
treachery,
mean,
I think, for
they,
a quote news outlet.
Sure.
I if I was BBC's lawyer, I would be like, I've seen the clip and I've seen the full thing. Um, like I said, he's kind of saying the same thing, but they just kind of like condense it. Um,
They
what
didn't.
I'm
No, they
curious
didn't.
of
They
is
didn't. They
what the
didn't. They
narrative
didn't.
was that they were using that for.
They didn't condense it though. They purposely created essentially a new message. They knew what they were doing.
Mm.
How is it even different from like the message though? Like they didn't add new words, so he basically just kind of made it more direct that he says go fight them as opposed to go down there, show strength. You got to fight like hell. They're trying to take your country from you. Don't let them. We'll meet at the Capitol. I'll be there. And I saw what they did was like you got to go fight them at the Capitol or something like that.
Yeah.
I did have one point to make. I think that is at the heart of why the Democrats lost.
Okay.
Um, so Biden he runs right. He wins, and one of the things he said during his campaign, which I don't think helped him win or anything, but he said, "I'm going to be a transitional president. I'm going to be a one-termer." He didn't fucking do that. Second, uh, he was old, and at a certain point, like Richard was saying, it was clear to the public that he was gone, and they should have came in, cut him off, maybe like 2, even 3 years into his presidency, and been like, now the woman that I chose to fill in for me in case I can't, she steps in. And then all the polls that showed Harris not beating Trump, right? For whatever reasons, there's no need to go into any of them, I think. But that's her as the candidate, maybe even the vice president, but she wasn't very present as a vice president. Had she been the executive, the you know, had she been the president, that would have changed everything. how people perceive her. She would have been in the media more. People would have like been like, "Oh, she didn't do a bad job," or you know, but they
Well,
didn't do that.
but you're assuming that her in the media would have been a positive,
Very
and
Uh,
I'm
true.
not sure if that's
I,
necessarily the case.
sh-
Very true.
well, she was doing that thing politicians do, where like uh,
Sometimes
someone.
speaking is worse than not speaking.
Well, I think
Sure.
if she would have leaned into her quirkiness and her weirdness, it could have worked. But they were trying to like scale it back. But someone should have realized she's going against Trump. He's quirky. He's weird. He says weird things. He like does this on stage. Like he'll do whatever comes to his mind. Uh, she should have just been out there and like been wacky. She would have been the president. I think her likability would have went up, her recognition, and she might have had a chance. Instead of just like having 100 days to run, no primary. Everyone's upset. No one really ever liked you a whole bunch. You weren't around. It didn't feel like uh, it wasn't like Joe Biden and Obama, who were always like
Sure.
in the media together
Yeah,
and like they had a good dynamic.
Biden was like a very active vice president.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think we should look into that a little bit, pause and like discuss this because this is what I would hope like the actual Democratic Party autopsy would contain, and like that's what everyone wants to know, right? There's been a couple books to come out, but they really have not told us much of anything. Um, yeah, like Biden choosing Kamala, had its own issues in terms of like DEI of just saying like I want to choose someone of this type, not that I want to choose the best person. And we can agree or disagree with that. But it was a choice and it was okay, cool. Now we have a minority female vice president. That's one thing, right? That obviously pissed off a lot of people though, worth mentioning. And to your very salient point, George, uh, Biden said, I'm going to be a transition president. This is a one-term thing. I'm just bridging. Like it's from their perspective, like we need someone strong to beat Trump, and then we'll move on, and then we'll grow, right?
Hmm.
Um,
But
and
I think him wanting to run a second term
mhm.
was probably a pressure from probably his wife and Barack Obama. I think Barack Obama really ran the presidency, and I think he probably thought, hey, this is working pretty good. Let's keep this guy for another 4 years, and I can really influence the presidency. I always thought it was very bizarre, and I still do, that I think Barack Obama is probably one of the only presidents who's never moved out of DC after his presidency.
Oh wow, I didn't even realize that.
They have a residence in DC.
Hmm.
Most presidents, when they're done, they are gone,
Right.
you know.
Go back
So
to
he's
it.
very active in DC politics. And
He did leave with no scandal though.
what's that?
He didn't have any scandals or any like big. He's
Well,
kind
the
of a
media
political
would never
creature. He's
the
all
media would
politics.
never cover his scandals. Just
I
like
mean,
with
there's media
Biden.
that
Just
would, and if
just like with Biden. He's clearly was
but
not up for
most of the media is
president.
right wing though. Most of the media is conservative and right wing, and they definitely ran it.
I would disagree with that, but
Yeah, I think it's shifted. I think during the Obama time it was maybe 50-50 or something. But I don't know. It depends, right? Like maybe not personal scandals, but maybe more political. I don't know. That's we'd have to go
But they're
into it.
not like it's not like Obama's thing, like he was part of, like bailing out Wall Street, but that's a big kind of institutional mechanism that was getting that done, as
Sure.
opposed to like Obama came in, this is his issue, this is his thing.
Yeah, you can say controversial policies like drone strikes of American citizens or, the
We're
coup in
already gonna do it.
Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I could take that point. I'm not as aware of the personal scandals. But talking about this Biden thing, because it is like a lot of the core of what this report should be, I think. Glenn,
Maybe his dementia made him forget that he said he was going to transition.
that's very possible.
That's
Um,
very possible.
very
what I
possible.
thought Richard was going to say.
Well,
You beat me to it.
yeah. Well, Glenn Greenwald had a good take around the time when after sort of after the debate where the world could fully see that Biden was not there, was not fit mentally. And there's like you could tell a lot of pressure from the Democrats or from everybody, like, hey, we need to get this guy out. We need a new candidate. Glenn Greenwald described it, and he took the words out of my mouth, describing it as like an anti-Cincinnatus, the leader who like won't give up power. Like the country's asking you to give up power, right? This from the Democratic perspective, right? If they want to, if they don't want Trump in, if that's their like priority number one, then like dementia Biden is not your guy, right? So the patriotic thing to do would be to step down. So like I'm curious about like who are the advisors? What are they saying? When did they notice it? I know the speaker, what's her name, Karine Jean-Pierre,
Right.
just had that book, and you know, there's all the clips, of course, of her at press conferences saying, "Oh no, he's president's totally with it, and he's like the smartest person. He's like Einstein in there." And then like now she's like, "No, we knew that he was gone." And obviously she's just trying to push a book in her own political non-future. I don't think she has any future because she was part of that, right? And like that's
Right.
I want more blame. I want like who knew, who was like there's obviously a desperate situation because their mindset, right? You think that Trump is the ultimate evil and you'll do anything to um, even extra legal things to stop him. But I want to know more on that, right? I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's part of the failings. They put everything had to revolve around that. Uh, and it's obvious that conservative spaces for media and social media, they have their ear more to the street, what people are really saying and doing. Where if you're over here trying to convince the public that the the old guy with dementia doesn't have dementia, and you're saying, like you said, ridiculous things that he's super good. Uh, you don't need to. They think they don't need to understand what people are talking about.
Kind of to, yeah, I appreciate that, George. Kind of to Richard's pushback on your point, George. I would say like, let's say Biden gets elected 2020 and like week one, he's like, all right, I'm out. Congratulations, President Harris. Um, I don't know if, I mean, maybe she'd be able to like operate outside the public eye and just work with the team and maybe work like coach her up in terms of public speaking and such. But I don't think even then would it have been a convincing case for the American people. I mean, granted, she only had so much time, right? Like 100 days or whatever. And that was like last ditch effort. We could talk about the fact that there was no election, which I think is a big thing. I eventually want to go back and look at how the Dems, how the Biden team treated Dean Phillips and Bobby, because I think that's a key part of it as well. At least for me,
Right.
it's a huge distaste for me. But even like to Richard's point, Kamala refusing to go on long form interviews because really, I mean, I don't think anyone thinks she could handle it. She could handle like
Well,
she's
I think she knows she can't handle it either because she
sure,
refuses,
yeah,
like you said, the long form interviews. She doesn't come across as a serious person to me.
yeah, I would agree.
Like she's all she can deliver are word salad little mini speeches, but she doesn't listen. And I say this kind of with the whole Democratic Party. They're just filled with sound bites and they're sort of institutionally unable to listen and talk kind of like extemporaneously. I
Sure,
saw a thing with Hakeem Jeffries that the same night about on CNN with the Venezuela stuff, and he just blurted out all this word salad stuff about Trump. It's just all the regular message points that they always talk about, and it was just so jolting because CNN had this great sort of policy, you know, some military advisors, and then you get this political hack, and
yeah,
it was just like, who are you? And she politely listened to him,
hmm
never gave a follow up, just sort of nodded her head and moved on to the next point. And then she dismissed him because it was just so over the top. And I think that's one of their things. That's a big difference with the Democratic Party. I don't think there's one thing that the Democratic Party is doing wrong, but
Hmm.
that's one of the many things they are. Is it's anti-Republican and especially anti-Trump. And I'm sure you probably remember this, Spencer, living in Seattle. To live in Seattle, you have to hate the Republican Party.
Sure.
It's a requirement.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm like,
even
that's
their white
really
nationalists hate the
sad.
Republican Party.
As soon as you cross in the state lines, they make you fill out a form.
Yeah, they really. And
Yeah,
New York's very similar. I mean,
sure. I think that on the Hakeem Jeffries thing, it's to me emblematic of like he's kind of one of their best people right now, and the photoshopping his muscles onto his Instagram page, and the fact that it seems like he just wanted to copy like the way Obama spoke, but like with none of the substance. Like at least Obama was an intelligent person, and
right.
he's obviously educated and had his own thoughts, right? Like he could, like I'm sure Obama could do fine in a podcast, for the most part. But
Well, I
yeah,
think one of again kind of a very kind of global thing that's changing, and I don't think the Democratic Party maybe necessarily is adapting like they need to. The move from I'll just say from large screen to small screen, where even maybe 5 6 years ago, TV news and stuff like that was, well, I'll just say pre-pandemic.
sure.
TV news and stuff like that was what's much more prevalent.
Hmm.
And now, post-pandemic, people move to all their apps and phones and stuff. There's many, many, many more podcasts, and like you said, the viewership of individual shows. Like for instance, your podcast could get 6 million people, and that wouldn't be viewed as impossible or even abnormal.
Sure.
Like Joe Rogan, you can be one person with a very small staff and have a worldwide audience. And
Hmm.
that's a fundamental change. And you have to have more transparency because there's no one there to protect you anymore.
Sure.
And I don't think the Democrats realize that yet.
I agree. Did any of you see the Tim Dillon interview on CNN?
No.
It's worth a watch.
Can you say who's Tim Dillon?
Tim Dillon is a comedian, podcaster.
Straight up maniac.
He's kind of a maniac.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. His podcasts are mostly just him diatribing, and it's very like you're not sure how much he's trolling and how much he's serious. But uh, it, CNN interviews him about the topic is loosely the influence of podcasters, and
Oh, okay.
but the CNN interviewer. But to me, this interview, Tim Dillon on CNN, represents the meeting of old media, new media, and old media questioning new media represented by Tim Dillon, saying that like, well, podcasts through the election, and it to me is just such a bad take. It's such a mistaken uh, thesis. And Tim Dillon's just like calmly dismantling every part of this poor girl's questions, and you could tell she's very stuck on ideology. Like, no, this is what had happened. If whatever, I forget the line. If Joe Rogan wouldn't have interviewed Trump, then we would have been fine. And Tim's like, well, Kamala was invited, like, and she could have got, like, she chose not to, right? She's not, and he's making a lot of the points we're making here about Kamala and some of that specific 2004 issue, right? George, did you see it?
I've seen clips of it.
Okay.
I watch more Tim Dillon than I should.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a fun, entertaining podcast for sure. But yeah, I think that's true. I think people are demanding more from their politicians, and I think I don't know. It's almost like a should be an entry point
Well,
to me at this point. Go ahead.
the small screen versus big screen that
Yeah,
Richard brought up. So the big screen is families sitting at home watching, network TV, which then becomes cable TV. Uh, the people that are originally kind of smaller screen were a different breed of individuals, and the internet was different back then. before like the little phones. Uh, the the old media that legacy media is reaching out to, whether it's conservative or whatever, or not conservative, it's that those are like older families, older people. Even the small screens are reaching like younger people way faster. The
Hmm.
growth for small screens is huge. And this is in general, but for the most part, like there's way huger amount of this Gen Z that has only the small screen.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that's just adding on to Richard's point. That's allows them to target better. And maybe that's what the Democrats might have meant when they said text, even though everyone hates getting political text. Um, they need to get through devices more.
Well, I think it's to both your points and some of my points too. I forget. So the part of the official Democratic Party autopsy, like some, and I haven't read all of what they were, the little they released, but part of it, the media, the traditional media was making the point that they're saying, oh yeah, well the Democrats are saying that they could do a better job of utilizing text media to engage with people. And I think that to me is emblematic of like you're not getting it. You're not getting it. It's not a technical issue, right? It's to kind of Richard's point with Kamala. It's like you're not listening. Like you're not responding to where the country's at. You have your own like dogmatic view of how things should be, and if people disagree with you, then you're going to vilify them. You're going to create sort of like a Puritan concept. Like you have to agree with all these things. Kind of to Richard's point about Seattle, right? If you don't agree with these things, you're not with us. And so very exclusive, right? Where I think the right is more inclusive, which has its problems too, because you get some not great people in there.
Right.
But as a whole, I'd say inclusivity is a better idea. Um, to me, and I was mean bring this up anyway, but it does go back to 2016 for me because obviously Hillary and Bernie are the two main candidates, and that was a to me a big shift in the wrong direction for the Democratic Party. I think had they just run like a straight Democratic choice, right, a straight primary caucus system in 2016, most people would agree at this point. It's kind of an old point that Bernie would have been the candidate. The Democratic Party, they changed their rules. They used super delegates. I forget all the specifics, but they really like they were dead set that Hillary was the safe choice. She was also the institutional choice. Um, but Bernie was the one that had the momentum. And I'm not saying I even agree with his policies necessarily. I thought he has a level of integrity, and at least he's like speaking his mind, what he really thinks, right? Which is outside traditional views. Which, hey, respect to that, right? Um, and there were these a few polls, and just sort of the sentiment of the time was people would say, "Well, Bernie's my first choice, but if I can't get him, then I want Trump." Or they do vice versa. Well, I want Trump, but if he's not the guy, I want Bernie. And the traditional Democrats, it just like blew their mind. How can you say that? They're so different. And they really they did not grasp, I think,
I think they still don't grasp that.
agreed. Yeah, and worth noting that to me, that was the first, at least recent instance of the Democratic Party going against fair elections, going against a democratic process. It really was like a small
Well,
group. Go ahead.
what what's interesting to follow on with what you're saying, I was in a similar position in 2016. I actually I was a huge Bernie supporter. I went to one of his huge rallies in Washington Square Park in New York City,
Mhm.
and I didn't exclusively go to Seattle for this, but I had a trip to Seattle planned, and Bernie was out there at the Key Arena,
Mhm.
and I went out there. I didn't get in because it was overflow. It was so packed, but he was just a phenomena. And no, I guess what I really wanted to say was I think that one of the reasons the Democrats kind of didn't go with him was because he was a proud democratic socialist.
Sure,
And here we are in 2024, and who's winning the mayor's races? Well, it's the democratic socialists
sure. Yeah, yeah,
in Seattle and New York, and
yeah,
so
yeah. And yeah, you could sort of understand why the Democratic elites or whatever leaders, I don't know if they're elite, why they might think that Hillary was the safe choice. And again, like they just weren't reading the room. I happened to be visiting my dad in Tacoma and I went to the caucuses with him, and it was 9-1 Bernie Hillary, and it was wild. It was like just unanimous. Everyone's like, yeah, we need like a massive change. This is after, right? Foreign wars, auto crisis, two bailouts,
Right.
economy's tanking, right? Like there was a
Right.
lot going on before kind of
Right.
the entry point into what we're seeing last decade or so, really. But I think it was a huge mistake, and they didn't course correct, um, and it was like they thought that they knew better. And I mean, there's no other way to describe it than like an oligarchy in the sense of it's a small group of people making a decision about how they think the country should. It's like their party, right?
Right.
But
Right.
they really like most people will let you know like Bernie would have won. Bernie would have had the at least much better chance. I think it's fair to say he would have won. Not that that's great, but from the Democrats who hate Trump, like you brought it on yourself, right? Um,
They did. And I don't think I'll just call them the Democratic
sure,
oligarchy. I don't think they realized what a betrayal it was to take the leading candidate because Bernie had gone through the Iowa caucuses.
yeah,
He had gone through New Hampshire and
hmm
a few other primaries, wildly popular. And they're like, oh, we can't let this popular guy go through. We need somebody else.
hmm
And I remember at the time I was fairly anti-Trump
sure,
and really pro-Bernie, and so I had all these Facebook posts, which now continue to haunt me.
Like this you?
yeah, sure,
I look
yeah.
back in the days, I was really anti-Trump at the time, and I'm like, wow.
His
It,
biggest fans always are. All the way to his second in command.
Sure.
well, like Spencer was saying, I don't fall in love with candidates, and like when I was in Seattle when I met you, Spencer, I never, and I still have worked on a people campaign. I just don't really like becoming like a cult member of a candidate. I like issues better.
Sure.
So that's why the light rail, monorail stuff was, I love that stuff because you can really just talk about particular issue and it's not so volatile because people get so, they fall in love with the candidates and you can't really have a normal conversation.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and that's such again, a huge difference is where Trump, again, I don't need to like all of the things about Trump. I've never liked everything about any candidate. I don't think that's a good marker. I think you should have certain issues and you have to sort of weigh your differences. Like with Trump, obviously, with against, well, in 2024, um, the immigration issue was front and center.
Sure. It's huge.
And by then, at that time, here in New York City, we were having buses come in every day full of immigrants.
Hmm
And Eric Adams basically said, "Look, this immigration thing is going to destroy New York City." And
hmm
they spent like $8 billion, and that was their reality. And if um, Harris had won, that would have continued.
Sure.
And I think, and that was kind of happening in other cities too. So that was such a huge issue.
hmm
But I don't think the Democrats didn't really run on that. They just ran on an anti-Trump platform, and I don't think that works anymore.
It hasn't worked twice in the last whatever 9 years, right?
Or it doesn't work with enough people.
Yeah, it doesn't work if that's the only, and that's kind of, I mean, this is a really maybe silly analogy, but I was comparing the Democratic policy, their party policy to like a football game. It's like
Uh-huh.
it's one thing if you have a good team and you lose to another good team just on its own merits, but it's another situation if you're both good teams and like you just keep shooting yourself in the foot with like penalties, like silly mistakes or like self-inflicted injuries. And I think that's a lot of what they've done. They could have been more competitive. And I'm not even saying like I said at the outset, I think it's in the best interest of the country if we have two strong parties that are both like
Right.
they both have good principles. Like both of them being into free speech is a great place to start. That's a
So to
sacred.
con- so to continue your football analogy, it's sort of like, being in a game and repeatedly taking like 70-yard field goals.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like, maybe this will work. Like
Maybe
just
it'll
it's never
maybe it'll work this time.
it's
Like
never been done.
he almost got it in last time. Let's try it again.
Yeah. Or
The
even maybe a better analogy is like you're just hoping the other team loses. You're like banking on them making mistakes or something.
Maybe the
My
guy will get injured. Maybe the
Sure,
they oftentimes do that. They sit around and wait for like the Republican to do something scandalous. Like when Trump became the candidate, the Democrats were like, "Oh yeah, let him be the candidate." He's such a scandalous person.
sure,
Um, and they made the mistake of like chasing that down and just keep trying. They just kept trying to do that. They also like chased down trying to poach conservative independents from the Republicans and also like older people. But as their like external message like publicly shifted to like pro LGBT and the DEI, I think they kind of were doing two things at once. Like, so they're aiming a lot of their outreach at like older people. I think they thought they had young people on lock, but because they were focusing on big screen young people, they forgot about little screen young people, and that's where geniuses like Steve Bannon and like the GamerGate stuff, where they targeted gamers to become political and to the right. And then they're like, this works so well, we're going to do incels, yoga people, gym bros, like health enthusiasts, uh, and it super effective. And then they went, we already reached out to disaffectionated young white males. How about disaffectionated young black males? Boom, brilliant, Steve, let's go. And it worked. They were
sure,
able to do it. And they used, the talking points we know, like Richard was saying, the immigration stuff, doesn't matter what race you are in America, a bunch of immigrants coming in is like not like it doesn't feel the safest, and then the crime starts happening, those criminals aren't going to select certain race victims.
sure,
They're going to go after it because everyone's American to them.
sure. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
yeah. I briefly want to talk about 2024, but maybe we'll briefly on 2020 because I don't know about you guys. I was excited about Yang, and he had like a new energy to me. He's like was kind of bringing up some different things that I don't think other people weren't talking about AI and some of the tech issues he was coming up against. And this may be more a media thing, Vice, like a party thing, but they really just like slammed on him, kept him out. And they were doing stuff like I remember in the debates, and they're changing the debate rules so he couldn't be on the stage. And it was just one of those things like you're sort of fearful of new energy. And it's not, I don't think critical, but it was just, I thought as someone who was really intrigued by his ideas, I thought, oh, okay, this is maybe some new ideas coming in. Like, but it felt much more like, no, we want these traditional. It was either, and it's so funny. Maybe Richard or George might have a thought on this, but like the way Bernie was perceived from 16 until 2020, I felt like there's a big shift where, especially with the debates, you're like, because you had Biden and he's sort of this that old school traditional, but like kind of in a mob style way candidate, and then you had Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders who just felt really old and out of touch at that time. They're just kind of like I don't know, shouty old people like complaining. That's how it felt to me. I was like, man, I felt you guys had a lot more to say 4 years ago. But then at that point, it was just very like, we need to get Trump out, very
No,
anti-Trump kind of stuff.
I totally agree. Shouty old people. I think Bernie's
ahead.
perception from 2016 to 2020 has completely changed. I think in 2016 he sort of seemed like, you know,
New
kind of
and
like
vibrant.
new and vibrant. In 2020 he's like kind of a sellout.
Yeah, a little bit. I think so. So there's no real, like to me at least, that didn't seem like the top three, Biden, Bernie, Elizabeth. It felt like none of those are really good, and they're not really going to be that. Maybe Biden's going to be the most competitive from just like a practical perspective, which I think they ended up choosing.
Yeah.
But like Yang was like, okay, this guy is like he's not partisan, really. He has got some traditional Democratic views, but he's like it had shades of Bernie in 2016. Like he's this new blood, and he's bringing up really relevant things. And they really, I think, shut him out, unfortunately. And Biden, of course, did win. And I think that gave Democrats a false sense that their overall strategy was correct, even though I think it was more people weren't happy with Trump 45, and it was more they wanted to just shift back. That's my sense of it. I don't know what you guys think before we start getting a little deeper into 2024.
Um, Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, it's kind
Oh,
of broad, kind of broad, kind of broad.
I think that they're protecting their control of the DNC by not letting outsiders come in. My friend pointed out that he thinks it's ironic that the party of DEI and sexual inclusivity or whatever just keeps nominating like old white men,
Sure,
or like at least in this case, like and their top brass is all like old white people. Um, and I think Democrats know that though too, like uh, which is I think they get split thin trying to, or their message gets all wonky because they're trying to talk to like old white people in a safe way, but also be cool, young, and like urban.
sure.
And they're up there like, like,
Oh,
Yeah,
they had, who was it? David Hogg, wasn't he?
yeah. He was one of the vice
He
chairs of
was,
the DNC
yeah,
for
for a while, right?
for a few, yeah, several months.
yeah, weeks, months.
Hell, if he, yeah, maybe a few weeks. Oh no.
One of our friends ran into him the other day running. You reminded me, George, one of the early DEI things before DEI was a big deal, but it was, I remember one of the lines coming out in 2016, and this is unfortunately like a very large talking point, was that, so it's Hillary and Trump, right? They're the candidates, 2016. One of the big lines was that, oh, well, America's not ready for a female president. And, those not voting for her, they're like anti-woman. And that was a line. It was pretty common. But I remember thinking like, man, had Bernie been the guy, I think most people think that it would have been Tulsi Gabbard as his VP. And I think a lot of people would have, like Dems would have been happy. I think they that ticket would have won. And obviously it's a VP, not a president, sure. But like, I think the Dems have had a problem for a long time of trying to play that game, and it's just backfire, backfire, backfire. I think it was pretty bad in 2024 as well, because you had Obama coming out saying, if you're not going to vote for Kamala, you're a racist. You're like, that's a paraphrase, but most people don't think that way. There are, of course, racists in our country, but that's not. I think most people want to vote for someone on their merits. And so I think from 2016 to 2024, I think you had that problem. I don't know what you guys, if you have inputs on
And,
it, but
well, the thing with Tulsi, I thought she was, and I agree. I think Bernie and Tulsi would have been a great ticket, and I think it could have been a very winning ticket. But I don't know exactly why, but it seems like, the old people at the DNC, they clearly really do not like Tulsi Gabbard.
sure,
And I'm not exactly sure why. She almost seemed like the kind of the perfect female candidate, successful military,
sure.
you know,
She's very well spoken.
smart, well spoken. So I don't know what the issue with her was, but that was really unfortunate. Again, the whole 2016 race was kind of it was sort of the Democrats kind of killing themselves off, really.
Sure. I would agree.
All
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go into like the serious stuff. I think that's a lot of why people really applied the Puritan test to Tulsi, that because she didn't agree with all the, like she was the head of the DNC, or one of the co-chairs of the DNC, and she left. She resigned her position so that she could fully support Bernie, right? That's who she was supporting. She's on that side,
right,
right? And
right,
I don't think the opposition to her was that she supported Bernie. I think it was more military industrial complex, or the fact that she's questioning Obama's foreign adventures with Syria. And I don't really want to get into it because it's complex, but
right.
also, I mean, the Ukraine coup was a big deal, at least to me. I was a reporter for our old political organization at the time and really covering a lot of that. And again, from coming from like 2003 when we're opposing these foreign adventures, now all of a sudden, we never really had interest in Ukraine, um, but we're choosing to help overthrow a democratically elected government because of policies related to the EU and Russia, and then supporting some of the worst elements. And again, like there are these practical things like, oh well, it's choice between really bad and like extremely bad, and so we're choosing really bad. But why are we in there at all? To me, that was a huge shift in the Democratic Party, and that's around the same time when they started going after people like Tulsi, which I think I think they're on the wrong side. I disagree,
Right.
um, and I think it's totally left out of the narrative of Ukraine now. The fact that we helped overthrow a democratically elected government, and
You have to have a show on that. Honestly, I'm pretty unaware of a lot of that stuff.
okay, there's a great Oliver Stone did a good documentary called I think it's called Maidan.
Okay.
I think it'll cover it better than I could. I mean, I remember I was knee deep in it at the time. I remember a lot of the reporting, Victoria Newland, Samantha Power, Jim Psaki, all that. Like it was gross what we did, and a lot like the phone calls really. We're hand picking the cabinet. These are the people that are going to be in your cabinet. This is what you're going to do. And then obviously, yeah. Anyway, but that's kind of just rounding up 2016 a little bit. But then let's talk about 2024 a little bit because obviously Biden had been president for a few years. There was, I think, sort of a couple of different stages where people that are paying attention could see the mental decline and then sort of the debate blow up of mental decline. But two people, well, three really, um, chose to run against Biden for the presidency, much as they did in 1968. Dean Phillips, Marianne Williamson, and Bobby Kennedy Jr., probably most famously Bobby. Dean Phillips, a lot of people they weren't tracking him, but I think he's a federal rep from Minnesota, if I'm correct. But he's just this like sort of average Democrat, not like nothing too remarkable. I remember reading about him at the time. But his point was really just like, hey, I think we should have another option. Like, I think we should do at least have a primary and just make a show of it in case, because I forget if he was actually bringing up Biden's mental decline at the time, but he was saying like, it's not good to just do the rubber stamp. And I forget if Marianne Williamson, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but she was running, I think, because she just wanted her own platform, and she's been running for president since 2020. And then um, Bobby was more nuanced. I think he was bringing up Biden's mental decline, but he also had some serious opposition. And then I think at a certain point, once Bobby's campaign was going, because he was running for a Democrat, they all were running as Democrats, much like Bobby's dad did against LBJ, saying like, this is not the direction the country should be going. At least that was part of what Bobby was saying. Um, Bobby's campaign, I don't know if you guys saw this, they financed this huge national poll, and it was a 50-state poll, and it was something like 10 times your average poll, and it was looking at three different scenarios: Biden versus Trump, Bobby versus Trump, and then Biden versus Bobby. And Biden versus Trump, Trump wins. Uh, Biden versus Bobby, Bobby wins. Bobby versus Trump, Bobby wins. So the only scenario where, um, anyway, the point being that like Biden wasn't going to win against anybody. Biden could not beat in a three-way race, right? And this is still when he's running as a Democrat. So from the Democratic perspective of we just want to beat Trump, right? For those people that believe in that, right? And this wasn't obviously they suppressed this kind of poll. It wasn't they did their best that people didn't see it, but it really was the case that Biden wasn't not going to beat anybody. And so they did some awful things. Well, one great lawsuit to read is long. Bobby versus Biden is about the censorship, and I don't want to go into the COVID stuff, but really it's important to note within 36 hours of Biden taking office, he leveraged social media companies to suppress speech and to remove Bobby Kennedy and others from social media. So there's like an obvious sort of conflict of interest, and Bobby did win that lawsuit. It's public domain. You can read it. If you don't believe me, it's very, very long. The other part is once Bobby was running, they changed the rules. Democratic Party didn't want an actual democratic process. They wanted an oligarchical process. They changed their rules. So, and they did it. It was insane. They changed the primary calendar, which they may have wanted to do for their own purposes anyway. It was going to be more supportive to Biden. But they said retroactively, any candidate who stepped foot in New Hampshire loses your any of your delegates, and then they now go to Biden, which is just it's an insane thing to do, but they did it. So like, and it's after the fact, so it's not even like giving you a warning, right? It's telling like viable candidates, um, the current Health and Human Services Secretary, who in a fair race probably would have beat Biden, their their delegates were removed. So to me, and then top it all off, there might be more I'm forgetting, but the Secret Service stuff was crazy. The denial of giving Bobby Secret Service protection, which had been done like earlier on in the cycle than the argument was, oh well, it's too early. Like no, Carter gave Ted Kennedy Secret Service protection way earlier, and it was so cynical and gross, right? Like what candidate more than Bobby Kennedy would require Secret Service protection, right? There were like multiple people tried to kill him, like even during the election cycle. So that was crazy. Um, they wanted to force him to like spend more money on the campaign, which so it was so gross, like despicable to me that that's how they were handling it. Like just run a campaign, right? If you think Biden is the best person, like sure he's a sitting president, it's a little unorthodox, but there was obvious question marks which came to light much more publicly, like not that long afterwards, right? That this person is not competent. He should it's like elder abuse, right? Um, to let him just keep doing his job. So that was despicable to me. I might be forgetting anything, but do you guys have any thoughts about that?
No, I totally agree. And I think the what you call the elder abuse, I think that's a much bigger or should be a much bigger issue than it has been because again, this is the president of the United States. And as a country and a party, how can you not find someone who's at least, you know, able to function as a normal working president? How can you take someone who's really, really, really far past his prime and really torture him and torture the whole country by having a person like that in office? It's just sort of like you said, it's elder abuse, and it's not really a small issue. You take someone who's not capable, and essentially they subjected him to total like public harassment by putting him on stage, and every time he walked and tried to talk, it's not his fault that he's declining.
Sure.
The party never should have put him up.
Yeah, that's the thing. Totally agree. I think I'd say I'd add the word humiliation to it as well. Like
Humiliation. There we go. I was
yeah,
looking
yeah.
for that word. Yeah.
It's, that's the part of the autopsy. I want to know like the names of these people. I want them to be, I think we
I
could
do
use more,
too.
I think we need more shame in this country with some of this stuff.
We do.
Like obviously he's declining. It's a physical, it's a mental health thing, right? Like people get old, it happens, but you don't have Alzheimer's like that. So you should be the responsible one, right? And yeah, it's just what like how early did they know what kinds of decisions were they making and like how could you let this happen, right? You couldn't reschedule it. I mean, there's a cynical view that like some people say like they wanted him to be called out so they would force. I don't. Who would ever
No,
know? Who would
no,
ever know, right? Like that's
no.
and what's the utility of thinking that anyway, right? Go ahead, George.
If it wasn't like uh, second term Reagan, right? Allegedly, he had similar issues.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't think no one ever saw it as treacherous or, that maybe people around him were running things. It's kind of how a cabinet works anyways, right? But there was a campaign against like the greatest candidate of all time, Donald Trump, and they should have put it. Yeah, they should have put him out. Brought in Harris. Like it was her responsibility, and she would have been ready, or at least had a much greater chance. Especially if like maybe she did something a little more ambitious. Uh, the Democrats under Biden weren't very ambitious. They played everything very safe, even all the Fed choices, which are good, like stuff like that, like the boring kind of nerdy things. Like they kind of try to do a soft landing, which we're still getting into. Uh, but they should have cracked down on crime. If you're going to let in a lot of people into your country, like have a plan, talk to your citizens about it. Don't just flood your cities and then pretend you're not flooding cities with a bunch of people. Uh, that's empirical. People just like walk out and like see an increase of people. You see the videos on uh, social media about these things, and yeah, they fucked up. They dropped the ball. They're the ones that
Well, and
ruined
it's
it by
almost
letting
with
Biden stay in.
with the immigration, it's it seems pretty obvious, like you said, to open the borders up and not kind of have a conversation with the public, to just assume that everyone's going to welcome in tens of millions of new people is like it's ridiculous. But it's almost like the again the Democratic oligarchy or whatever. It's like they answer to somebody else because who if you're going to sit down and talk about immigration, obviously during the 24 election cycle, immigration was a huge issue. I don't think they were so stupid that they didn't know that, but they didn't do anything to try to curb it.
They did. They did. They tried to pass a bill, and then it almost got in, and Trump was like, "Wait, no, no, no. We need this issue. Vote no." And they voted no. They knew. They knew. They knew. People were upset, and they knew it was going to be bad. But they could
But
have
it wasn't
maybe been
because
more
but it wasn't
aggressive.
because they wanted to fix immigration. It was only because they needed the bill to talk about to say, "Oh, we did something about immigration," but they really didn't want to do anything about immigration. They just wanted to win the election. That's where I think the Democrats are, in terms of like I guess the autopsy point, they don't what was it? They're not interested in governing. They're only interested in power. And I think that is it seems kind of obvious in some points. They get in office. The stuff in Minnesota that's going on right now with Walz and the fraud,
Mhm.
he literally doesn't care that billions of dollars of taxpayer money are being stolen from the taxpayers. There is no Democrat. I don't think there's well, certainly not very many, but there's almost no Democrats, if any, that are speaking up about that fraud in Minnesota, saying this is an issue. This is not good.
Right.
And starting with Walz, the governor, he has nothing but good things to say about what's going on there. Or he's just spinning it like, oh, we've got it all under control, which clearly he doesn't. But he's not concerned about that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will
He
say,
just he just wants to stay in power. And some people say, I can't believe this, that he wants to run for president in 28.
he's a fucking goofball.
the
That's what
what
I've heard. That's what I've heard online, and I'm like, really? He's
No,
he, I
that
think he's
talk about delusion, especially after this.
maybe
I mean,
maybe they should have a
he,
Walt Harris ticket.
oh gosh. I will say that one of the responses, which shows you the depth of some of the problem, the traditional media response to the Minnesota stuff, and you guys probably saw this, but CBS, I mean, a lot of it, like they're critiquing the person, was his name Nick Shirley? I
Nick
forget his name.
Shirley.
Nick Shirley. They're critiquing him and like trying to investigate him and saying, oh, like that's your response. And the one you
So
guys probably saw the one clip of the one, I think she's CBS News. She's like, well, we
No,
call
I think it was CNN. No,
CNN. Okay.
I think everyone's seen that.
Yeah,
She's
it's
on and
the
this
phone.
isn't someone tricking her. The CNN cameras are running, and this is her voluntarily filming herself calling the daycares up and saying, "Hey, are you a legit daycare?"
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I asked Mr. Bundy, and he said he's a good guy and he loves women, and
Thank you. Exactly what the whole country was thinking.
it's
And
great.
I just thought, how can you essentially you've got that camera, you're kind of holding a gun to your head in terms of filming that in front of the whole country
It's
and
mind
thinking that this is making you look good.
it's crazy. Beyond like what we were talking about earlier with some of the January 6th reporting and like there's like fraud on one level and then just I think this is just incompetence and delusion on this end. You're like, how can you think this is a good idea? But this like that's how they think. It's like I'm thankful for them revealing like this is honestly how you think. And
It's kind of like the BBC filming the people that spliced together and edited Trump's speech.
sure, yeah, here's how we did it. Like they make a little mini
Here's how we did it.
documentary. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, yeah. I will say kind of goes back to tying in 2016 and 2024. And other people have made this point, but had the Democratic Party made different decisions and not shot themselves in the foot and chose poor policies, you know, and again, other people made this point, but like Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, and many others would still be Democrats, and they still would be like you. They would. George is frowning. They would, and they could be
I
part
think they
of.
would too.
They could be part of a governing coalition. Like, all right, well, maybe Tulsi's not DNI, but maybe she's something with defense, or maybe she's part of your State Department, or whatever, or maybe she's whatever, and maybe Bobby is within a HHS scenario. Maybe he's the head of the EPA or something, right? I think, and part of it, again, touching on Bobby a little bit, and also the media. And I don't want to go too deep into the health stuff. I'm happy to some other time, but part of the thing that was really telling was that they didn't want to really debate Bobby on health stuff. They wanted to shut him out. They wanted to say you're crazy. I brought this up with George and Mike, but the Hill, I think the Hill Rising with Crystal and Sagar, who in general I used to like. Um, I think they had a different way to look at the media and way to look at stories. It wasn't left right. It was more like, I don't know, institutional. And they gave a pretty good interview to Bobby, but then at a certain point at the end, Crystal has her sort of leftist um, moral stage saying, "Oh, well, I won't even talk to you. This is a bridge too far. This is you're way out of line." And like, so people just wouldn't even debate him on these things, which to me is like, you don't like democracy, you don't like free speech, you want to just shut this person out. When you could have included them, you could have had the same thing with Tulsi and Bobby. He's like, no, they don't meet your purity test, therefore they're not good enough. But that is not a problem on the right. It's a problem on the left.
And that I think is again in terms of um, autopsy. One of the big issues with really all Democrats is this purity test thing.
Sure.
I remember one time I met I was with a friend of mine and he introduced me to some of his friends and we were talking. This is just a few years ago. I think it was, it might have been when Trump was finishing up his first term. And, I never sort of expressed myself as a massive Trump supporter, but I don't hate him. And I think because I didn't hate him, my friends were like, after, I only talked to him like, I swear, 2 or 3 minutes. We were just getting introduced and we had just a little chit chat.
Sure.
And they kind of wrinkle their face and they're like, "Are you a Democrat?" Because apparently I didn't pass their purity test. I was like not doing well. And I was like, "Yeah, I am." But I was like, "Do I have to be a Democrat? Like,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
do you not
Should I
do you
leave?
not talk to anyone other than Democrats?" I always thought it would be fun to have a test to prohibit people from doing any business with anyone who's a Trump supporter. So like your cab
Oh,
driver, your airline pilot,
sure.
you know, if they're Trump supporters, you can't do business with them. So you're gonna have to quit flying. You know,
Yeah.
you can't buy groceries from your pro-Trump grocery store. You know,
Yeah. It is on dating apps. I will say that. Um, they're like, and I'm not on currently, but just having been on over the last couple of years, it's quite common to say like no Trump supporters, no one that likes the orange man, whatever, or like vaccination status is a big one too. But like they
no, really?
yeah. They set it up as filters. Like, all right, like it's
Wow.
just I would never. I mean, I never was big into the apps anyway, but it's just a
That
funny.
works both. That works both ways though too.
Sure, sure. Yeah, both people can filter out. I meant to put this up front, but we live in a polarized world. I've had close people to me like break off all contact because of things they thought I believe in, or some of it is stuff I believe. But and like, some of the one of the threads of my other show talking about the LaRouche movement is like we were many of us very, very extreme, very, very devout with what we believed in, right? And so like I know what that looks like. I know what like having a radical belief system looks like, where we're sort of off on our own thing. But it's just to me, I don't get it. I mean, I get it. I don't like it. And I've tried to do my best to reconcile with the people in my life that have put those statements out there that like they don't want to talk anymore. Like, okay, like I get it. I'll be here, if you ever
I
want to
have a
come
few friends
around.
from Seattle. I have a couple friends from Seattle that did that to me too.
Yeah. And it's in general, like I'm more on the free speech. I'm more like, well, I'd rather keep you in my life so at least you would know how I think about these things. And that's partly actually why I want to do this whole thing overall to say like, look, I don't think my beliefs are that crazy. I don't think they're that extreme. You can look at like how it sort of moved. I think I think Bill Maher and others have made the joke that like their beliefs, like my beliefs haven't changed, just like everyone else changed around me.
Right.
And like,
Well,
I,
let me bring up one thing though, because one of my friends in Seattle, I'm not sure. I think again, we never talked about Trump too much because I knew she was like pretty pro left.
Mhm.
But I think one of the things that really ticked her off about me was I'm very pro nuclear, like you are.
Sure.
I'm like, if you want something more environmentally friendly to produce electricity, it has to be nuclear power. You have to include that in the mix. You can't get there with windmills. It just doesn't even come close.
Mhm.
I'd love to have a talk sometime because out here in New Jersey, well, it got shut down, but they were almost on the verge of starting an offshore wind project.
Mhm.
And I think, salt water with windmills and steel and metal, I can't imagine that would work for very long. I think the lifetimes of those windmills would be like a few years.
Yeah, I think HHS or the government, the current White House put out some kind of policy restricting offshore. I'm not knowledgeable on it, but I didn't realize that it really significantly messes with whale life. And there's other negative things that I wasn't aware. I'm not knowledgeable, but that was news to me. But
Well, I guess those offshore windmills, they're kind of anchored on the seafloor. And so they just have like a big, probably reinforced concrete base or something
mhm,
that's kind of like on an anchor, but they're not stationary. That anchor, as because the windmills are on kind of a flotation device as well, and they're kind of anchored down, but they can still move. So when they move, it drags that around the seafloor and just scrubs all the sea life off of the seafloor and stuff like that. I guess it's not as environmentally friendly as they'd like to think.
gotcha.
But
Interesting.
that would be a whole interesting segment. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Trump issued some executive order. It was not a popular project. A lot of people were protesting out here, but I think that did finally kill it off.
Yeah, and I think last I knew, New Jersey was 50% nuclear anyway. which is kind of
We
cool.
have, I think, at least two nuclear plants. Yeah, that I don't think they're shutting them down. I'm sure the environmentalists do. Oh, another great segment you could do sometime is the energy situation in California.
Oh yeah.
Really the whole West Coast. They're in trouble bad. I don't know if you want to get into it, but I've
Not
been
at
following that. It's one of my rabbit holes I went down on in YouTube.
Yeah, not at the moment. I know I have been thinking a lot about the Nawapa plan recently as like I still think it's a good idea that it would. I mean, I thought of it also in reference to sort of the Nick Fuentes problem in terms of like young men don't have a quest right now, and I think
Uh-huh.
they get caught up in all kinds of crazy views because it's a whole long, right, it's whole discussion. But I think the country would benefit from a massive infrastructure plan. I don't know if I know George and Mike remember Nawapa, but I don't know if you remember if you do, Richard.
I remember Nawapa.
Yeah. So I
I
mean,
really got into that. I think we had at least one long talk about that. I was like,
yeah.
wow, that's amazing.
Imagine right now if, let's say, the Trump White House came out and said, look, there's this plan. It's going to take 10, 12 years to build, and we're going to need millions of primarily young men to do it. All right. And as a part of that course, it'd be like a military style enlistment. You're going to sign up for a couple of years, but you're going to get trained. You're going to get your college paid for while you're in. You'll get a GI Bill and you'll get a VA loan when you're out. And you're going to come out with skills to build. Like you'll have building skills. You'll have all kinds of skills, right? And just imagine what that would do for our young people. I thought about that as a whole separate thing, but yeah, I mean, is the modern Democratic Party going to do that? Highly doubt it. They would be the natural place. George, what's up?
If the Democrats, um, there's an opportunity there to do something like that. Plus, look, the immigration thing, unless it's described to like replacement theory, that it's like a Jewish conspiracy to bring in immigrants to destroy Western civilization to ultimately conquer or enslave it. Um, the like I think it relieves pressure from like kind of like countries that are hurting. There's a lot of corruption. Um, like someone leaving from Venezuela coming here, obviously they're escaping communism. But if you're gonna let it happen, that's a perfect opportunity to like build new cities, build and employ people and use people. And I think everyone in politics probably knows this at some level. Uh, Employed people, fed people, uh, aren't dangerous people. They're not going to be
Sure,
recruited. Eisenhower said it best. Like if you don't develop the Middle East, radicalism will spring out of it.
sure,
And lo and behold, shitty conditions behold shitty people. So if you're going to bring people from these shitty conditions, uh, have a plan. Have a plan. And I think people could get behind because one, from a Republican point of view, a business point of view, or something, great investment opportunity.
sure.
Not just in contracts to build this stuff, but all like the windfall economic opportunity, like new cities, new towns, like housing,
Housing
new
crisis. Yeah,
dealerships. It'd be really good. And then plus we're doing like the city on the hill thing, taking in immigrants, building like a new place. Plus the new thing they build is to kind of support the old, the old civilization that's here,
sure,
and the old people, and they would be it breed new life, and they would integrate. They'd probably like this is way better. I don't want to be a dick about it. I don't need to like be real proud to like come from this place that I fled from, and that's cool if you are, but like it's way better here. Obviously, like you
sure.
like do things in your community. You can have your religion. No one's gonna press you on that.
Yeah,
It'd be great, and they would win elections. They would be better statesmen. They'd actually be helping their country instead of just like trying to message things correctly. Uh, they
yeah,
would be able to be more off the cuff, go out there and like, hey, we're fighting for this, we're fighting for that.
yeah. Agreed. I think it'd be especially useful and amazing to integrate Canada and Mexico into it as well, like a project. And the Nawapal plan and the Plino and Flegon, they have those arms to it as well. But it would be like just an amazing opportunity to industrialize, to expand the West, the Northwest, to get young people. Again, it's going to be especially young men that would be doing this job, and you'd be raising their value, right? You're increasing the value of young men. They can say, look, I helped build this thing. I spent whatever 4 years in Yukon
Hmm.
territory building a dam, and now I have an education, I have skills, I can have a down payment on a house. I can help build new cities, build new houses, whatever. So yeah, I think it'd be amazing.
I don't
And
know,
it's a
Spencer. That doesn't sound very inclusive to me.
everyone's invited. It's gonna be young men, and it's gonna be a vision, right? Like it's a 10-year plan, and we're gonna help out. We're
At
gonna help.
least
Yeah, I mean, like modern estimates 10 to
50
12
years.
years, like 10 to 12, but still like, and there's branches, right? Branches will take longer, like the Trans-Canada
We're
Canal.
talking about the government doing this. It'll be like 100 years.
Well, we won't let California plan it. We'll do federal. Just
Definitely
kidding.
not.
Yeah, no, you're gonna increase the acreage for farmland in the Southwest, to help the droughts, help power in the West, right? New cities. Anyway, it's just the type of thing that the Democrats could say, hey, this is what we want to do. This is our vision for the future. It's not,
They won 5 elections in a row with that kind of vision.
yeah, talking about
Five.
FDR. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
the only way the Republicans won, what was like making a new FDR, which was Eisenhower.
yeah. Well,
Like the,
and they needed a course correction from Truman, who was crazy. I think I did a whole film about it, but we could talk on that
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
I don't know much about his view.
yeah. It was a right wing shift, and it was crazy. But yeah, I agree with your larger point, right? But yeah, I think that's. I don't know. To me, it seems like a natural kind of way to conclude it. Does anyone have any concluding thoughts they'd like to? Oh, hold on. We got a comment here. So the autopsy focused on losing young voters. Okay, losing minority male vote. DEI and gender stuff was misaligned with economic concerns. I would add, was anything built back better? Did the Anti-Inflation Act bring inflation down? Okay. Do you guys have thoughts on that? Losing of
I mean,
voters, real quick, George had sort of alluded to this, right? That they were looking for young voters, and I think they were very confused with the fact that young voters nowadays have moved much more right, right? That's
well, they're also reachable on
Or much
screens.
more right, right.
They're focusing their outreach traditional legacy.
sure,
The young voters aren't there, and the right went into like the Discords, the Roblox, the World of Warcraft, 4chan, Reddit. They went out and the right wing has a lot better like MLM kind of situation going on where like it could be financially lucrative to become an influencer in these different places.
sure.
And the Democrats just didn't want to touch those areas because maybe they're like, oh, these are radical you know. But hey, that's where young eyes are at.
For those first three, and then of course, Richard, feel free to jump in. For those first 3 points, losing the young voters, losing the minority male vote, DEI and gender stuff was misaligned with economic concerns. To me, those are reflections of um, being out of touch with the zeitgeist and thinking that like, oh, well, we've had young voters, we've had minority voters forever. Um,
Hmm.
we're going to bank on that one, and we're not going to ever be self-reflective on our own principles and policies that are like losing them, right? That the other side could, like in a fair debate, win that debate. Like they left the field. Part of it is these things, they just left the field. DEI stuff too is more like, sorry, go ahead.
I think that the one comment by Joe Biden where he said, I think he was talking to I don't know if he was talking personally to someone, but he said if
You don't vote
if
for
you
us.
you know well, I think he was talking to a black voter, and he said if you vote for Trump, you ain't black.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Breakfast
And
Club.
just the pompousness of such a comment is just ridiculous.
It
Well,
is.
actually, that helped him. That helped him, I think, at that point because he was making a joke. He was comfortable enough to make a joke, and you know, he's one of the few.
I don't think it was a
Uh,
joke, though.
Yeah, I don't think it was a
no,
joke.
it was
It
no.
was not a joke.
It's
No, I
only a
don't think
joke.
it was at all.
Joe
I think
Biden's
the
always
Democratic Party, they do to this day, they think they own black people. They think they own the black vote, and all black people had better vote Democrat because the
I think
Republicans are.
that's a joke though, and the people he said it to, they laughed. They know that. They know how Democrats feel. But Joe Biden's one of the few. This is why he's beloved by like the black Democrats in America. If it wasn't for black Democrats, Joe Biden wouldn't have won. Like they did all the groundwork. They're the ones that crowned him, which is why he promised them a black vice president. But yeah, that actually
Well,
helped
I'll
him. I
tell
think
you
that
that
was to
but
his
I think
benefit, saying that.
since then, I think that has changed a lot, though.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say long term, it turned off a lot of people that say, well, wait a minute, like what? Like I think it turned off a lot. Maybe it like solidified the base and maybe helped them on a small short-term practical sense.
Yeah.
But I think it was more, and maybe it was partially a joke, but I think it's more like an admission of how they honestly think and the certain like arrogance and overconfidence that they do because they had forever, right?
yeah.
Since like JFK, and but
But it goes
yeah,
back to again how the Democrats they're focused on population groups as opposed to issues.
in principles, yeah, I would agree.
They try to corral different groups of voters and then demonize the opposition to those groups of voters, and they just don't have any issues that they stand for.
Yeah,
And it's like my comment was anything built back better. That gets to on an issue basis. What issue did they address with the Build Back Better program? That was just a message point to spend money.
sure.
They
And you can go
definitely
back
didn't do.
into, I'm sorry.
Oh, they definitely didn't do a good job of even trying very like aggressively to get out the message like we're doing this, this is getting done, and like if they would say it, it'd be like a little announcement. Maybe they talk about it in one speech, but like I think Richard, you said it. Trump's success part of it was like he kept repeating the same things and kept pounding it. FDR had the fireside chats. Like I don't know if they were weekly or nightly, but Joe Biden maybe even like a half hour, or this could have been Harris's job, and she could have FaceTime with the public. We did this, we did that, because they did, obviously things got done because it's not just Democrats that run the country, and it's not just the government that runs the country, but their
Right.
policies help. Policies go out, things go out for like other institutions and companies to do. The inflation did, kind of compared to the rest of the world, it went down the most. It slowed down the most. Uh, Obviously there was room for things to get more expensive, but they didn't. I think Mike nails it with like he said DEI and gender stuff was misaligned with economic concerns. It was like someone says on the Democratic side, "Hey, I can't afford food," and Democrats reach out and go like, "But I support you being gay." It's like, "But I'm not gay."
Right. Then they come back and say, well, if you were gay, you'd be able to afford things better.
Yeah, and we'll count on your support. Even yeah,
That's right. And
yeah.
here's a flag. Here's a flag for you.
And I think even that bullet point, at least the way it was written in the comment, was DEI and gender stuff was misaligned with economic concerns. And again, that's probably a snapshot of something larger. But my guess is, I do think they're not reading the room about just like what Americans support in general, vice what their messaging was from that sort of arrogant standpoint of like, well, we're and like, okay, taking a step back, like,
I think they're reading the room. They're just in the wrong room.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I was going to say, like, to their credit, and I don't agree on this one, but like, there can be plenty of circumstances where, you're a minority, like you might be like on a principle, like think like William Wilberforce trying to end slavery in Britain, right, in the 19th century. Like he was a minority at first, and he was right, but he had to just lobby and like he had to sell the point until it changed policy, right? Um, but to me, yeah, they're reading the room wrong. They're in the wrong room, but they're not ready to admit that the American population does not agree with that stance. And that's a broad stroke for that highly complex, nuanced policy. But that bullet point from the autopsy tells me they're not really being reflective. I'd say that.
The DEI, even those letters, it's sort of like LGBTQIA plus.
Hmm.
When you take all those letters together, you get very confusing stuff. Same with DEI. I think a lot of people are on board with, I think diversity and inclusion, the equity thing.
Sure. That's
Number
the
one, equity it's undefinable. You can't really define what that is. How can you measure
Oh,
equity? How do you know
actually,
when
Richard,
equity has been reached?
Kamala did define it. She said equity means we didn't all start off in the same place, but we all end up in the same place.
Right. And as a qualitative, that's a great qualitative definition. But in
right.
terms of if you want to measure like within a company, how do you measure?
Sure.
It's like salaries, you can measure salaries.
Mhm.
It's interesting that, they talk about women not having like pay equity, but none of the women complain that they're not represented as, welders or, you know,
Deep sea divers and bricklayers,
bricklayers
sewage,
and
sewage treatment. Yeah, yeah. Like
exactly,
yeah,
trash collectors. No one, I don't think there's any women that are saying, hey, there's only 10% of women are picking up the trash. We need, we need job equity.
sure.
They
How
don't
is it?
care.
Yeah, how is it going to work in the real world? Are you going to force people to become trash collectors? And another qualitative way people
Well,
do.
there's that too. How do you can't force that stuff. So again, the the diversity inclusive and the inclusivity stuff is interesting too because working in a retail company who has embraced the DEI stuff, the inclusivity it sort of automatically excludes white men,
Sure.
and they don't say that, but you just know that that's happening, and it's kind of off-putting, really, when they
Sure.
say diversity and diversity, equity, inclusion. You know that you're not part of the inclusion, like,
Yeah.
and it's a little weird.
Yeah. Like by definition ends up being exclusionary because you
Right.
you can't really enforce it. And obviously there's a super complex nuanced issue, but the other way people describe it is the difference between equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome. Say like
Right.
equality of opportunity, everyone has the same chance to do something. Equality of outcome is like everyone will have the same result, which is what the equity part usually is described as.
Exactly.
I know it comes up in the admission scandals. There's a lot of problems to it. It's not just white men. I'd say one of the most ignored um, people that lose out in this policy,
Asians.
Asians, 100%. Asian,
Smart little
100%.
Asians.
Yeah, like
Too
they're
smart,
not.
too many.
Yeah,
They don't
there's
fit.
there are a different class of minorities that are like they're super intelligent, very industrious, very successful, and they get left in the dust as well and that just should be a little bit of an insight into the idea that it's not really about the thing they're telling you it's about. And I'm not going to ascribe the motives, but like just their stated intention can't be the intention because that's not how it works out. So that and again, that's just like they're out of touch. They're not realizing the effects of their beliefs, of their ideology when applied to policy. And I think
Well,
most Americans realize like we can't govern a country based on these kind of criteria.
and I think
Well,
their
the other
failure
thing
as a
is,
party, I
Say,
think
go
the
ahead.
failure as a party is that like you're the Democrats. Instead of like trying to force companies and schools and private universities to like do this and do that and do that, therefore you're not this and like because you're gonna help the lower community and people come up and there's do something about it, you know, fix those problems, build more schools. Hey, like that would be nice.
sure,
You were the little girl on that bus, build more buses, you know, uh f- help create new industries, create something to help these people that are diverse have equity. Why you just for you just all you're saying is get it from them, and all you're doing is enforcing the rule of law that you must, and they're avoiding what they should be doing, Building Back Better. They're not doing it.
Fair. Richard,
They
do you
just,
have
they just,
yeah, sorry.
yeah. Those are my closing thoughts.
Okay. Okay.
But the Build Back Better thing, I it's one of those sort of, it sounds kind of like a cool message point, like Build Back Better, and it sort of creates an image, a different image in everyone's mind, because everyone can think build back, like, oh yeah, maybe we need new rail, maybe we need new roads, maybe we need electric cars. So everyone kind of has in their head like building, what that means. Maybe it's housing, but I don't think any of that was successful. I think like the EV, the car thing was a, a bust. I think I read an article recently. I know there was a lot of activity. God, this might have been in Trump's first term when the post office was looking at buying electric vehicles for to replace their old um, postal vehicles, and the Sierra Club went crazy because they weren't going to buy all electric. And I was like, they thought that was sorts of horrible thing, and they pushed really hard to get all electric vehicles in the postal fleet on the replacement side, which didn't happen. But it couldn't happen because the postal vehicles, like I live in a kind of a small town, suburban town in New Jersey, and so you'd have to outfit every postal facility with charging stations,
It's a
and
huge
that's
cost.
not going to happen. Huge expense,
Huge, yeah.
and for the, someone on the federal level would have to organize that in itself would be a massive nationwide project, so it doesn't, it's message points that they don't connect the dots of what they're really saying. They don't really realize that what they're saying is rather nonsensical and kind of impossible to have happen, similar to what's happening out in California, where they've got, I think, two refineries shut down and a pipeline shut down in the last 2 months. And the whole oil industry is kind of freaking out because they're looking at like $10 a gallon gas by the end of the year. So
Jeez.
yeah, we should talk about that later, Spencer. That would be
Yeah.
a whole show. It would be more than one show. I've been watching that stuff on YouTube for the past month. It's just fascinating, scary, but fascinating because there's no going back.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be
So
interested. I know last time we spoke about you were thinking about starting a show and want to encourage you to do that. I do think, yeah, like and we probably should wrap this up in a bit here, but
yeah,
part of the goal of this was to show, a particular lens into the Democratic Party, a little more nuanced view, and I'm glad we had different viewpoints, really, different sides of the coin perspective. Oh, yeah, George, yeah, George will go on. Yeah, I'm sure we could get you some guests as well, but I do think it's important, right? More discussion, more showing that there's commonality of concern for these issues, whether I know George and I disagree on some things, Mike and I, et cetera, but it's have that discussion and being upfront.
here's an idea. Here's an idea, Spencer.
Yeah,
I'm still working on my show, by the way. It's moving slowly. I've been kind of getting some funding put together, and I'm have a meeting with probably my editor next month. So
nice.
it's coming together. But I thought it would be great. I've seen some other groups on Facebook forming, but I think like just having a show on how to talk to people of radical different backgrounds
Sure.
about issues that they maybe radically disagree on, but to do that respectfully,
Yeah,
and it can be done,
sure.
without, but people, we've sort of been trained to sort of immediately throw rocks at each other, and then everything breaks down very quickly after that.
I know Professor Peter Boghossian does that. He's one of the
Okay.
people behind the cynical studies, the so-called squareds, where they wrote those fake papers to get them published in DEI journals. Pretty funny. But like he's a, I think he was a Portland State philosophy professor, and he does that where he just has, he's trying for like radical inclusivity discussions about like very diverse views. So yeah, that can be interesting. But yeah, and I think this is yeah one part of it. I'm not sure if I want to do more of these per se, but I want to get this out there because of the reasons I mentioned, the report and then like discussions with friends and realizing,
I don't know
okay,
about that
there's
report. I know there was some concern about, oh, the Democrats are paying, to get this report, which obviously is going to be biased because they're paying for it.
sure.
But I didn't know they didn't release it.
Yeah, they
That's
said on further thought, we're not going to release this at
that's
all.
kind of damning. You sort of, the assumption is you're getting this biased report prepared because you're paying for it, and then apparently, even though you paid for it, it's not looking so good to the point where you don't even want to let anyone see it.
Exactly. You'd think that they would have just not told anyone they were doing that. And again, it's just like it's another misstep. But it's reversed. They could say, look, on third thought, we realize we should release it, and here it is. And
Here's an
let's
idea. They should send it to the BBC. They can edit it and then they can release it.
that'd be good. That'd be good. Nice. Well, I think I'll
Maybe we'll end on that.
yeah, I was gonna say that might be a good way to end it. I appreciate you all coming on. I really do. Yeah, I think it'll have some utility. So thank you for coming on, and we'll be in touch.